Hello everyone, we are at PAX Unplugged. I am with the Dungeon Dudes, and there's been some very exciting news. One of your books is coming to D&D Beyond. What is that book?
Dungeons of Drakkenheim, which is the first book that Kelly and I wrote based on our original actual play campaign of the same name, is now available on D&D Beyond.
Yeah, we are so excited to be able to bring this to D&D Beyond. It's been such an incredible journey. The book is an adventure for characters level 1 to 13, set in a dark, ruined fantasy city where it is riddled with cosmic horror, faction intrigue, and all of that good stuff.
What's everything people need to know about this book that don't know about it?
Dungeons of Drakkenheim takes all those elements that Kelly and I love about Dungeons and Dragons and really packs it into a single adventure. So we have a city that is been destroyed by an Eldritch calamity, fought over by 5 different factions, where the players get to embark on a personal story, a personal quest of their own, and in the process get caught up in a story way bigger than themselves, where their choices are going to define the outcomes for the campaign. Dungeons of Drakkenheim really allows the players and the game master to work together to create this story where their actions and their choices define the campaign, set against this backdrop of eldritch horror and a contaminated urban wasteland.
On top of that, the 5 rival factions are all vying for control of the ruins. The main decisions that the player characters have to make on the adventure is going to be what's to be done with the eldritch crystals left behind by the rain of meteors that fell on the city, and who is going to sit on the throne of Drakkenheim and rule the city. The 5 factions present very differing opinions on those obstacles, and the player characters through the campaign are going to choose who they think is right and who they think is wrong. This is not a Unite the Factions campaign. This is a campaign where the ideologies of the factions will conflict each other in great ways. And so you might be able to get a few of them to ally with each other, but it's always going to be faulty alliances. And between the 5 factions, this campaign doesn't have a big bad evil guy. There's no big evil behind the scenes. There's no great demon lord or epic dragon. I mean, there are demons and dragons and liches and all that, but they're not the main villains. The main villains are a choice made by the players on which faction they oppose, and that faction is going to become a problem for them. Each of the factions is presented in a way that has both ways that they can work for the party, if you're allied with them, and then strike teams and schemes that they're going to use against the party if they're made an enemy of.
Oh wow! What was the idea behind that? Like, why did you decide to move away from like that typical big bad?
I think for us, and especially for Kelly, who was a player in the original campaign, and for myself, who was the dungeon master in the original campaign, for us, we like to portray a very nuanced world that reflects a lot of the mess and that are often associated with politics and disasters. And so the world of Drakkenheim is a world that is wrestling with a cosmic scale disaster that has ruined an entire kingdom. And asking the players to make those hard and difficult choices over what they believe the world should be like in the wake of this disaster is one that we thought was really a fascinating one to explore over the course of an entire D&D campaign. Because for us, I think the magic of Dungeons & Dragons is that fantasy that as a player, your actions and choices have consequences but can change the world. And we really wanted to live that by creating a world that is filled with problems, a world that is falling apart. The players then get to make that choice of, well, what are we going to do about this? In a way that allows for their stories to be individual, unique, and different.
I do also think that what happens with this choice on not having a major villain, but the villain is essentially chosen by a consequence to the actions of the players, means that player agency takes the forefront of the campaign. At no point can the players be like, oh, that's not fair that this faction is coming after us. Everything that happens to them is a product of their own actions.
This is on you guys.
Yeah. And as a player in the original campaign, you can watch me turn an obvious villain near the outside of the campaign, I made some choices that come back to haunt me at the ending of the campaign that seem so obvious, and I had nobody to blame but myself, and it's pretty hilarious even to look back and be like, oh yeah, I should have seen this coming. But that's kind of the joy of the Drakkenheim campaign, is in choosing which factions are your allies and which ones are your enemies. At no point do you feel railroaded or even linear, and I think there's a distinct difference there. A lot of great campaigns are linear, and I love a good linear campaign that is like, okay, Rise of Tiamat, well, what are we aiming for? Well, probably stopping the rise of Tiamat. There's no surprise there, and that's not a bad thing. I love that campaign. It's great. But we took inspiration from some of like our favorite video games. We love the Fallout series. The Fallout is a great depiction of choosing your factions, and that changes the course of what type of a game you're playing. And those sorts of games have always stood out to us. And so when we were looking at this, the villain of the setting is the city itself. And what happens in that city is up to the players.
If you had to like tell someone within just 1 minute, what kind of defines Drakkenheim for you?
People who aren't willing to risk their lives for something don't come to Drakkenheim. And so it is a city that is built for adventure and conflict, and for characters to strike out on their own in a way that they want to, what they want to explore, what they want to do, who they want to interact with. And so if you are looking for a campaign where your player character and what they want is really at the heart and center of the campaign, and you get to make really tough choices around that, you're going to love Drakkenheim.
Even if you want to just like look at the bullet points, there's a lot of content in this book. I mean, I'm looking at right now, like you mentioned, this is levels 1 through 13. We've got, can you run me, there's like 50 new monsters. There's legendary creatures in this.
Yeah.
You've got new encounters. You've got 40 plus new magical items, 14 new spells, 5 new backgrounds, and then you've got personal quest rivals, scheming factions, urban exploration, and of course maps, which is a big deal right now for D&D Beyond.
Yeah, and honestly, the work that went into the maps in the book, the physical book itself, so something that we did is the physical book has a lot of line art maps. But then there was the map pack that you could get as well that had beautifully illustrated maps that you could set out at your table. And those were also could be used as digital tools online. And now to see those entering into D&D Beyond, and I love the artwork in the maps. There's obviously a color scheme that Drakkenheim has.
Yeah.
And you can see it in every single map. There's a lot of purples, a lot of greens. The haze is sort of all through the city, and it's this magical haze that has that sort of vibrant color scheme that infects everything.
I am certain that I will be using the maps as my own reference tool when I run the games. Because in Drakkenheim, there's over 20 adventure locations. And because we wrote Drakkenheim to be a non-linear campaign, many of the individual adventure sites are readily adapted, even if you're not running Drakkenheim. So you get this suite of 20 corrupted urban locations, everything from ruined temples and chapels to gardens and mausoleums to just a tavern row.
Yeah.
And all of these have been detailed with maps. And so even if maybe the story of Drakkenheim isn't completely to your interest as a game master, we wrote the adventure to be something that is a bit of a toolbox, that the adventure locations can be pulled apart, the maps can be easily repurposed, and it's very easy that even if you don't want to use our Drakkenheim setting, all you have to do to use the material from Drakkenheim in your own homebrew setting is crash a meteor into the biggest city in your setting, and you're good to go.
I think that's one of my favorite bits about the Drakkenheim book.
A guide to how to turn your campaign into Drakkenheim.
Just smash a meteor into
yeah.
it.
Smash.
I think that's one of the great things about, like, I love all of the adventure locations, but I love that, like, we hear online all the time people saying, oh, hey, I'm thinking of running a Drakkenheim one-shot for my players. I'm thinking of doing this adventure site, and another person will run a different adventure site. And so a lot of people who don't want to run the entire 1 to 13 campaign will grab any of their favorite adventure sites. I think one of the most used ones is the inn outside of the city.
Yes, we there's a tavern known as the Black Ivory Inn that, when the disaster happened, was caught in a time loop.
Oh,
And
nice.
so-
I love a time loop.
Yeah,
And it's like almost like a puzzle dungeon. The players go in and then they have to figure out what to do to stop the time loop. And if they die in the time loop, they actually just reset back to the beginning.
Until
of the
they
time
can find a
loop.
way to
It's
escape.
Deathloop. It's Deathloop.
Yeah. It
If you
totally
haven't
is.
played the video game Deathloop,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I
So
love Deathloop.
I'm all for this.
Yeah.
So it's probably one of the favorite one-shot locations because people just love throwing their players in and being like, you got to figure out the puzzle here or else you'll never escape. And it's great.
So yeah, it's a huge collection of maps. Like, that was one of the things that when we were originally working with Ghostfire Gaming on the book for the first time, I don't think they realized how many adventure sites and maps we had created for the campaign, because it was the result of several years of real people playing a real campaign and building all these maps that we had created both virtually for some of our online play games, and many of the maps were rebuilt by taking the photos of the terrain and the Dwarven Forge setups that I had made.
Oh, cool.
And it was fun, even in the process of writing the book, we were able to watch the actual play and transcribe bits from the show. Like, that was part of the writing process. And now all the maps that we've created are all on D&D Beyond, and they can be used with the maps tool, with the token artwork for all the new monsters, the legendary creatures. It's all there. So it's kind of mind-blowing how much of just a one-stop it is for all the Drakkenheim content, whether you're running the entire campaign or just pulling it apart piece by piece.
What has all of this been like for you?
Honestly, it's in no short way, it is a dream come true. Every step of this has been a dream come true. I think, again, looking back at the two guys who just wanted to answer people's questions online about how help them to play D&D, we are both very creative people. And even at the outset of this, it was always, wouldn't it be cool if someday people cared about a setting that we made? Wouldn't it be cool if someday people were looking at that or buying that or running their own adventures? These were things that didn't seem fathomable to us. They were dreams. And to be where we are now, it actually is still hard to have it sink in that our dreams are coming true. And with the jump to D&D Beyond, the thing I'm most excited about with that is just so many more people have access to experience the world that we created, play in the campaign that we designed, and be able to tell those stories. And I love hearing the stories because, again, every Drakkenheim campaign is so different from each other that, having been a player in a Drakkenheim campaign who backed a certain faction, I love it when somebody else is like, oh, my players backed this completely different faction and we destroyed the city and we burnt it to a crisp. And I'm just like, wow, like, tell me more, because that's awesome. And I will have never been able to experience that. But because we were able to create this open-ended book and people actually cared about buying it, it means that I now get to hear all those stories and those tales. And it's just such a rewarding experience. And I'm just so thrilled at every step of the way. Even the process of creating the book, it was so thrilling when we were getting artwork back. And I was like, a year ago, this was just something I was thinking in my brain, that I was like, wouldn't it be cool if a monster looked like this? And now there's artwork of it, and I'm like, how is this even reality? But here we are, and I'm ecstatic.
I am so grateful. This process is the product of more than just the work of Kelly and I. There are the people, there's the original Drakkenheim cast, Jill and Joe, who played with us, as well as Kyle, who was our technician and editor and everything run behind the scenes through every episode of the show. our partners, but also our audience, who have supported us on Patreon, who have watched the show, our incredible publisher at Ghostfire Gaming, who helped bring this whole thing to life, all the amazing and talented artists, the editors, the graphic designers, all of the people behind this, the fantastic team at D&D Beyond, who just, like, we came into one of the first meetings with the D&D Beyond team, and they were like, yeah, we've read the book cover to cover 4 times already. And I just find myself so overwhelmed with gratitude to be able to work with so many other talented people on bringing this world to life and sharing it with such an amazing audience of people who have shared their stories back with us. Both Kelly and I like to look at ourselves as artists, and I feel that as an artist, one of the ways that you pay it forward is inspiring other people, and that we've been able to reach so many more people and share all this and work with so many amazing people is just, I can just only feel grateful for it. I feel very, very fortunate and incredibly lucky, because it's been such a rewarding experience.